Marcus Johnson woke up early on Monday morning. Today was not a normal day for him. As the CEO of Sky Global Airlines, he usually spent his days in big meetings or in his fancy office on the top floor of the company building. But today was different. Today, he would be a regular passenger on one of his own planes. Marcus looked at himself in the mirror. He wore plain blue jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and white sneakers. No expensive watch. No designer clothes. Nothing that would tell people he was the boss of the whole airline. He wanted to look like any other person taking a flight today. Perfect, Marcus said to himself. No one will know who I am. This secret trip had a serious reason. In the past month, Sky Global Airlines had gotten many complaints. Black passengers said they were treated badly by some flight staff. They said the staff was rude and unhelpful to them, but nice to white passengers. Marcus, being a black man himself, took these complaints very seriously. The only way to see if this is true is to experience it myself, Marcus had told his assistant yesterday when he planned this trip. Marcus packed light, just a small backpack with his laptop and a book. He called a taxi instead of using his company car. When the taxi driver asked what he did for work, Marcus just smiled and said, "I work in the travel business." At the airport, Marcus stood in the long check-in line like everyone else. He watched his staff work. Most seemed professional, but he noticed small things. How some smiled more at certain passengers. How others spent more time helping some people than others. No one recognized him. Marcus had been CEO for 5 years, but he usually only met with top managers. Most regular workers had never seen him in person. His picture was on the company website, but there he wore expensive suits and had a serious business look. Today, in casual clothes and with a relaxed face, he looked very different. "Next, please," called the check-in worker. Marcus stepped forward and handed over his ID and ticket information. "Window or aisle seat, sir?" she asked, not looking up. "Window, please," Marcus answered. He noticed she didn't smile at him like she had for the white woman before him. The worker handed him his boarding pass. "Gate 24. Boarding starts in 1 hour." Marcus thanked her and moved on. He went through security and walked to his gate. He bought a coffee and sat where he could watch everything. The flight to Chicago would take 3 hours. Marcus planned to watch carefully how the flight attendants treated different passengers. He would take mental notes of everything he saw. When boarding time came, Marcus lined up with the first-class passengers. He had booked a first-class seat because problems often happened there. Some staff didn't expect to see black passengers in first class and treated them differently. "Boarding passes ready, please," called the gate agent. As Marcus handed over his pass, the agent looked surprised for a second. "Enjoy your flight, sir," she said in a flat voice. Marcus walked down the jetway to the plane. A flight attendant with blonde hair and a name tag that read Karen Williams stood at the door greeting passengers. "Welcome aboard," she said to the man in front of Marcus, with a big smile. When Marcus reached the door, her smile disappeared. "Seat number?" she asked coldly. 2A, Marcus answered politely. She pointed down the aisle without another word. Marcus nodded and found his seat. As he sat down, he took a deep breath. The real test was about to begin. How would the staff treat him during this flight? Would they prove the complaints right or wrong? Marcus had no idea that this simple test would soon turn into something much bigger than he had planned. Marcus settled into his first-class seat. The leather was soft, and there was plenty of room for his legs. Other passengers filed past him to their seats. Marcus noticed how the same flight attendant, Karen Williams, smiled and helped the white passengers with their bags, but barely looked at him or the other black passengers. "Good morning, everyone. Welcome aboard Sky Global Airlines Flight 253 to Chicago," said a male flight attendant over the speaker. "We will take off in about 20 minutes. Marcus watched as Karen moved through the first-class cabin, checking that everyone had their seat belts on and their seats in the right position. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her smile seemed forced when she gave it to certain passengers. When Karen reached the row behind Marcus, he heard her speak in a warm, friendly voice. "Can I get you anything before takeoff, sir? Water? Orange juice? Water would be great. Thank you," the man replied. But when Karen came to Marcus's row, her voice changed. It became cold and businesslike. "Seat belt, please," she said without making eye contact. She didn't offer him a drink. Marcus nodded and tightened his seat belt. He made a mental note of the difference in treatment. This was exactly what the complaint letters had described. As CEO, it made him both sad and angry to see it happening on his airline. The plane was almost full now. A mother with a crying baby sat 3 rows behind Marcus. Karen frowned at them as she passed. The mother looked stressed as she tried to calm her baby. Marcus pulled out his phone to make some notes about what he had seen so far. He opened his notes app and began to type quickly. He wanted to record everything while it was fresh in his mind. Just then, Karen's voice came sharp and loud beside him. "Sir, all electronic devices must be turned off for takeoff." Marcus looked up. "I'll just be 1 more minute. I need to finish this note," he said politely. Karen's face tightened. She had been on duty for 12 hours already. Her feet hurt. Her boyfriend had broken up with her by text yesterday. And now this passenger was not following her instructions right away. "Sir, I said turn it off," she repeated louder. Other passengers turned to look. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the attention but kept typing. "Just 30 more seconds, please. This is important." Something snapped in Karen. Without thinking, she reached down and slapped Marcus's hand hard. The phone flew from his grip and fell to the floor. "When I give you an instruction, you follow it immediately," Karen almost shouted. The entire first-class cabin went silent. Every passenger stared in shock. The other flight attendants froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus sat very still. His hand stung from the slap. He couldn't believe what had just happened. In all his years of flying, as a regular person and as a business executive, no flight attendant had ever touched him like that. Slowly, Marcus bent down and picked up his phone. The screen was cracked. He turned it off and put it in his pocket without saying a word. His heart was beating fast, but he kept his face calm. Karen seemed to realize what she had done. Her angry expression changed to one of worry. Without apologizing, she quickly moved on to the next row. The male flight attendant who had made the welcome announcement came over. "Sir, I'm very sorry about that." "Are you okay?" he whispered. "I'm fine," Marcus said quietly. "But I'd like your name, please." "James Taylor, sir," the man replied, looking nervous. "Thank you, James," Marcus said. He did not explain why he wanted the name. He did not tell James who he was. As the plane began to move toward the runway, Marcus looked out the window. This flight was turning out to be much more revealing than he had expected. And they hadn't even taken off yet. What else would happen in the next 3 hours? The engines roared louder. The plane picked up speed. And Marcus Johnson, the unknown CEO, prepared himself for a very interesting journey. The plane reached its flying height. The captain turned off the seat belt sign with a soft ding. Passengers began to move around the cabin. Marcus sat still in his seat. His hand still hurt a little where Karen had slapped it. He touched the cracked screen of his phone and frowned. But more than the phone, his feelings were hurt. In his 45 years of life, he had faced many small and big acts of rudeness because of his skin color. But he never expected it to happen on his own airline. From the corner of his eye, Marcus saw Karen talking to James, the male flight attendant. They were whispering and looking in his direction. James seemed worried. Karen looked angry and defensive. She kept shaking her head. Marcus watched as James came over to his seat. "Sir, I'm very sorry about what happened. Would you like a complimentary drink?" James asked in a quiet voice. "Water would be fine." "Thank you," Marcus replied. James brought the water quickly. "Sir, I want you to know that this is not how we normally treat our passengers. Ms. Williams is having a difficult day, but that's no excuse." Marcus nodded. "How long have you worked for Sky Global, James?" 7 years, sir." "And Karen?" "About 6 months, I think," James answered. "She's still pretty new." Marcus nodded again. This was useful information. Maybe Karen had not completed all her training, or maybe the training itself needed to be improved. As CEO, he needed to look at the whole picture. The next hour passed quietly. Marcus watched as Karen worked in the back of the plane, serving drinks to the passengers in economy class. She seemed to be avoiding first class now. Other flight attendants took care of Marcus and the passengers near him. Marcus took out his book and tried to read, but he couldn't focus. His mind kept going back to the slap and the way Karen had talked to him. He also thought about the different ways she had treated white passengers compared to him. It was all exactly what the complaint letters had described. 2 hours into the flight, Karen finally came back to the first-class cabin. She had to serve lunch. When she reached Marcus, she kept her eyes down. She did not say anything as she placed his meal on his tray table. She seemed to want to get away from him as fast as possible. "Excuse me," Marcus said before she could leave. Karen froze. Her back was stiff with tension. Slowly, she turned around. "Yes, sir," she said in a tight voice. "May I have some extra napkins, please?" Marcus asked politely. "Of course," Karen said. She grabbed some napkins from her cart and handed them to him without meeting his eyes. Then she hurried away. Marcus watched her go. He saw how she joked and smiled with the white businessman across the aisle, how she took time to chat with the white elderly woman in row 4, how she barely spoke to the young black woman in row 5. The pattern was clear and consistent. Marcus ate his lunch slowly. He was thinking hard. As the CEO, he had to decide what to do about this situation. Should he report Karen and have her fired? Should he talk to her after the flight? Should he change the training program for all flight attendants? The flight was halfway done. In 90 more minutes, they would land in Chicago. Marcus decided he would wait until the end of the flight to make his move. He wanted to see if Karen's behavior would change. He wanted to give her a chance to do better. As he finished his lunch, Marcus made his decision. He would reveal his identity to Karen after the flight. He would talk to her directly about what had happened. But he would not just be angry. He would try to understand why she acted this way. And then he would decide what to do next. Marcus looked out the window at the clouds below. Sometimes the best way to fix a problem was to face it directly. And that's what he planned to do. The plane hit some rough air. It shook and bounced. The seat belt sign came on with a ding. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," said a voice over the speaker. "We're experiencing some turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seat belts." The shaking got worse. A woman a few rows back made a small scream when her coffee spilled. Flight attendants rushed to help passengers. Even Karen was moving quickly now, checking that everyone was safe. The turbulence lasted for 15 minutes. During this time, Marcus watched how the crew worked together. James was calm and professional. A young female attendant named Hasha was kind and helpful, but Karen still seemed stressed and short with some passengers. When the rough air finally stopped, Karen began to clean up the spilled drinks and food. As she passed Marcus's seat, she didn't look at him. It was like she was trying to make him invisible. Marcus noticed something else too. A young black family with 2 small children was sitting near the front of economy class. The children were scared after the turbulence. The parents tried to calm them down. Other flight attendants stopped to help and offer comfort. Karen walked right past them without a word. Interesting, Marcus thought. It's not just me she treats differently. The flight continued smoothly after the turbulence. The captain announced they would land in Chicago in about 1 hour. Flight attendants collected trash and prepared for landing. Marcus asked James for a cup of coffee. While James was getting it, an older white woman across the aisle called for Karen's help. "Excuse me, my TV screen isn't working," the woman said. Karen smiled warmly. "Let me fix that for you." She spent 5 minutes showing the woman how to use the screen and suggested some movies she might enjoy. Just then, a black teenager in the row behind Marcus raised his hand. "Excuse me, my screen isn't working either," he said politely. Karen's smile disappeared. "Just press the reset button," she said quickly and walked away without helping. The teenager looked confused. He pressed several buttons but couldn't find the reset. Marcus turned around. "It's this small button on the side," he said kindly, pointing to it. "Hold it for 3 seconds. "Thanks, sir," the boy said with a grateful smile. Marcus made more mental notes. This was not just one or two small incidents. There was a clear pattern in how Karen treated passengers of different races. As CEO, he couldn't ignore this problem. His airline had to be a place where all passengers felt respected and valued. As the plane began its descent to Chicago, Marcus thought about what he would say to Karen. He wanted to be firm but fair. This wasn't just about the slap anymore. It was about making sure his company lived up to its values. The plane landed with a small bump. Passengers clapped. The captain's voice came over the speaker again. "Welcome to Chicago, where the local time is 2:15 p.m. The temperature is 72 degrees. Thank you for flying with Sky Global Airlines." People began to gather their things. Marcus stayed in his seat. He wanted most passengers to leave first. He needed to talk to Karen without a big audience. James came by. "Did you have a good flight, sir? Apart from, you know." He looked embarrassed. "It was very educational," Marcus replied. As the plane emptied, Karen stood by the front exit, saying goodbye to passengers. She still avoided looking at Marcus. She didn't know that in a few minutes, her whole world would change. Marcus waited until the last economy passenger had left. Then he stood up, straightened his simple t-shirt, and walked to the front of the plane. It was time for Karen Williams to learn who he really was. Marcus walked slowly to the front of the empty plane. Karen was checking something on her phone, not paying attention to him. James and 2 other flight attendants were in the galley area, cleaning up. The captain and co-pilot were still in the cockpit. "Excuse me, Ms. Williams," Marcus said in a calm voice. Karen looked up, surprised that a passenger was still on the plane. When she saw it was Marcus, her face showed worry. She probably thought he wanted to complain about the slap. "Yes, sir. The exit is right here." She pointed to the open door, clearly wanting him to leave. "I need your full name for my report," Marcus said. Karen's eyes narrowed. "Report? What report?" "The report I'll be writing about today's flight," Marcus explained. "I need to include your full name." Karen sighed and crossed her arms. "Karen Williams. If you want to complain, there's a form on the website. Or you can call customer service." Her voice was cold and dismissive. "I don't need the website or customer service," Marcus said. "I need to know who I'm dealing with directly." The other flight attendants had stopped what they were doing. They were watching now, curious about what was happening. Karen rolled her eyes. "Look, I'm sorry about your phone. The company might pay for the repair if you file a claim, but I was just doing my job. You needed to turn off your device." "This isn't about my phone, Ms. Williams," Marcus said. "This is about how you treat passengers, especially passengers who look like me." Karen's face turned red. "What? Are you saying I'm racist? That's not fair. You didn't follow the rules." James stepped forward, looking nervous. "Sir, maybe we can." Marcus held up his hand, stopping James mid-sentence. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. From it, he took a small card and handed it to Karen. "What's this?" she asked, taking the card. "My business card," Marcus said simply. Karen glanced down at the card. Her eyes grew wide as she read. "Mark U.S. Johnson, Chief Executive Officer, Sky Global Airlines." The color drained from Karen's face. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The business card shook in her trembling hand. You're, she couldn't finish her sentence. Yes, I'm Marcus Johnson, the CEO of this airline, Marcus confirmed. And I've been watching how you treat different passengers for the past 3 hours. James gasped. The other flight attendants froze in shock. No one had recognized their own boss sitting in first class. I didn't know, Karen stammered. She looked like she might faint. That's exactly the problem, Marcus said firmly. You shouldn't treat any passenger the way you treated me today. It shouldn't matter if I'm the CEO or just a regular customer. Everyone deserves respect. Karen's eyes filled with tears. Her hands were shaking badly now. Am I fired? She whispered. Marcus didn't answer right away. He was thinking about the best way to handle this situation. He didn't want to make a quick decision based on emotions. I'd like you to come to my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., he finally said. We need to have a serious talk about what happened today. Not just the slap, but everything I saw. Karen nodded weakly, still holding his card like it might bite her. The captain emerged from the cockpit, curious about the silence in the usually busy plane. When he saw Marcus, his eyes widened in recognition. Mr. Johnson, we had no idea you were on board today, the captain said, extending his hand. Marcus shook it. That was the point, Captain. I wanted to experience our service as a regular passenger. He turned back to Karen. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., don't be late. With that, Marcus nodded to the shocked crew and walked off the plane. Behind him, he could hear the whispers start. Karen Williams stood frozen, staring at the business card in her hand, realizing her career might be over. Karen barely slept that night. She tossed and turned in her bed, playing the day's events over and over in her mind. The moment she slapped Marcus Johnson's hand, the look on his face, the business card that changed everything. I slapped the CEO, she whispered in the darkness of her small apartment. I'm going to lose my job. By morning, Karen's eyes were red and puffy. She put on her best black pants and a clean white shirt, not her uniform, but professional clothes for an office meeting. Her hand shook as she tried to put on her makeup. At 8:30 a.m., Karen stood outside the tall glass building that housed Sky Global Airlines headquarters. She had walked past this building many times, but had never been inside the upper floors where the executives worked. You can do this, she told herself as she pushed through the revolving door. Just explain what happened. Maybe he will understand. The security guard at the front desk checked her ID and made a call. Ms. Williams is here to see Mr. Johnson, he said into the phone. He listened for a moment, then nodded. Yes, sir. I'll send her up. He handed Karen a visitor badge. Take the elevator to floor 30. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. Karen's stomach was in knots. When the doors opened on the 30th floor, a young woman in a neat suit greeted her. Ms. Williams, I'm Sophia, Mr. Johnson's assistant. Please follow me. They walked down a long hallway with glass walls. Karen could see people in offices working on computers or talking in meetings. Everyone looked busy and important. She felt very small. Sophia stopped at a large wooden door. She knocked gently, then opened it. Sir, Ms. Williams is here. Thank you, Sophia. Please send her in, came Marcus Johnson's voice from inside. Karen took a deep breath and stepped into the office. It was bigger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a view of the whole city. A large desk stood at one end of the room. Marcus Johnson sat behind it, looking at some papers. Good morning, Ms. Williams, Marcus said, looking up. Please, have a seat. He pointed to a chair in front of his desk. Karen sat down, her legs feeling weak. Mr. Johnson, I want to say how sorry I am about yesterday. I didn't know who you were, but that's no excuse. I shouldn't have. Marcus held up his hand, stopping her. Before we talk about yesterday, I'd like to know more about you. How long have you been with Sky Global Airlines? 6 months, sir, Karen answered, surprised by the question. And before that? I worked for Eastern Airways for 3 years, but they cut staff and I lost my job. Marcus nodded. I see. And how has your experience been with our airline? Karen didn't know what to say. Was this a trick question? Should she be honest or just say what he wanted to hear? The truth, please, Marcus said, as if reading her mind. Karen took another deep breath. It's been hard. The training was shorter than at my old airline. Some of the senior flight attendants aren't very helpful to new staff, and the schedules are tough. Yesterday was my 4th flight in 2 days. I was exhausted. That explains some things, but not everything, Marcus said. He leaned forward. Ms. Williams, do you know why I was on that flight? Karen shook her head. We've received 15 complaints in the past month from black passengers who say they were treated poorly by our staff. 15, Ms. Williams. That's a serious problem. Karen's face felt hot. And you think I'm racist? The word felt ugly in her mouth. I don't know what's in your heart, Marcus said calmly. But I know what I saw yesterday. I saw you treat white passengers with smiles and kindness. I saw you treat black passengers, including me, with coldness and impatience. Those are facts. Karen wanted to deny it, but deep down, she knew he was right. A tear slipped down her cheek. So am I fired? She asked in a small voice. Marcus looked at her for a long moment before answering. Marcus stood up from his desk and walked to the window. He looked out at the city for a moment, then turned back to Karen. I could fire you, he said. Many CEOs would. What you did was wrong on many levels. Karen lowered her head. More tears fell onto her hands, which were twisted together in her lap. But I don't think firing you would solve the bigger problem, Marcus continued. Karen looked up, confused. The bigger problem. Marcus nodded. If I fire you, what happens? You leave. We hire someone new. But does anything really change? He returned to his desk and sat down. The truth is, Ms. Williams, you're not the only one with this issue. The complaints we've received involve several staff members. He opened a folder on his desk and pushed it toward Karen. These are some of the complaint letters. Please read a few. With shaking hands, Karen picked up the folder. She read the first letter. Dear Sky Global Airlines, I am writing to express my disappointment with how I was treated on Flight 302 from Atlanta to Denver. While white passengers received prompt service and friendly smiles, I was ignored, spoken to rudely, and made to feel unwelcome. Karen read 3 more letters. They all told similar stories. Black passengers being ignored. Flight attendants being less helpful to them. Small but hurtful differences in treatment. I didn't realize, Karen said softly, closing the folder. Most people don't, Marcus said. That's what makes this type of bias so dangerous. It's often invisible to the people doing it. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Sophia, could you bring in the packet now? A minute later, Sophia entered with a thick envelope. She placed it on the desk and left quietly. Here's what I'm going to propose, Marcus said, opening the envelope. Instead of firing you, I want you to help us fix this problem. Karen was surprised. Me? But why would you trust me? After what I did. Because sometimes the people who make mistakes can become the strongest advocates for change, Marcus explained. You've now seen the problem from both sides, as someone who acted with bias and as someone who got caught doing it. He handed her a brochure from the envelope. The title read, Understanding Unconscious Bias, a new training program for Sky Global Airlines. We're launching this new training program next month, Marcus said. All staff will take it, but we need people who can speak from personal experience, people who can share real stories about how bias affects our passengers. Karen looked at the brochure. You want me to talk about what happened, about how I slapped you? Marcus nodded. Yes, it won't be easy. People will judge you. But your story could help other staff understand why this matters. Karen was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "What if I say no?" "Then yes, you will be fired," Marcus said honestly. "I can't keep someone on staff who treats passengers differently based on race, not after they've been directly confronted about it." Karen thought about her options. She needed this job. She had bills to pay and no savings. But this wouldn't be easy, standing in front of other staff, admitting what she did, facing their judgment. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Johnson?" Karen said. "Of course. Why are you giving me a second chance? You don't owe me anything. In fact, I owe you an apology." Marcus smiled slightly. 20 years ago, I was a young businessman on a flight. A flight attendant assumed I was in the wrong seat because I was sitting in first class. She tried to move me to economy, even after I showed her my ticket. Her supervisor came and apologized, but the flight attendant never did. He leaned forward. "Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow, Ms. Williams. Even people who make big mistakes. The question is, what will you do with that chance?" 3 months passed. Karen sat in a small room at the airline's training center. She wore her flight attendant uniform, freshly pressed. Her hands gripped a cup of coffee as she waited for her turn to speak. Through the door, she could hear the voice of the training director. "Today we have a special guest who will share a personal experience about unconscious bias. Please welcome Karen Williams." Karen took a deep breath and stepped into the room. 30 new flight attendants sat in rows, all looking at her. Some smiled. Most just looked curious. "Hello," Karen said. Her voice shook a little. "My name is Karen Williams. I've been a flight attendant with Sky Global Airlines for 9 months now. I'm here to tell you about the biggest mistake of my career." She placed her coffee on a small table and stood straight. This was her 5th time giving this talk, but it never got easier. 3 months ago, I was working a flight from New York to Chicago. I was tired. I was stressed. And I let those feelings affect how I treated passengers. Karen paused. Specifically, I treated passengers differently based on their race. A few people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. This was not the usual training talk they expected. Karen continued. "On that flight was a black man in first class. He was using his phone after I asked passengers to turn off electronic devices. When he didn't comply immediately, She swallowed hard. I slapped his hand, knocking his phone to the floor. Gasps came from the audience. Karen nodded. Yes, it was unprofessional and wrong. But what made it worse was that I had been rude to him from the start, while being friendly to white passengers. I didn't realize I was doing this until later." She took a sip of water. "What I didn't know was that this passenger was Marcus Johnson, our CEO. He was flying as a regular passenger to check on reports of racial bias in our service." More shocked faces looked up at her. A young man in the front row whispered, "Oh no," loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I slapped our CEO," Karen said. "But Mr. Johnson didn't fire me on the spot. Instead, he showed me something important." She picked up a folder similar to the one Marcus had shown her. "These are real complaints from black passengers about how they were treated on our flights. Reading these opened my eyes." Karen walked slowly across the front of the room. "I never thought of myself as a racist person, but I had to face the truth. I treated people differently based on their race. I smiled more at white passengers. I was more helpful to them. I gave them better service, and I didn't even realize I was doing it." A young woman raised her hand. "What happened after the CEO confronted you?" "He gave me a choice," Karen answered. "I could be fired, or I could help fix the problem by sharing my story and helping with this new training. I chose the second option. It wasn't easy to admit what I'd done, but it was the right thing to do." Another trainee asked, "Did you ever see the CEO again after that meeting?" Karen smiled. "Actually, yes. Mr. Johnson checks in regularly on the training program. In fact," the door at the back of the room opened. Marcus Johnson walked in, dressed in a business suit. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. Some trainees sat up straighter in their chairs. "Sorry to interrupt," Marcus said. I just wanted to stop by and support Ms. Williams. She's doing important work here. Karen nodded at him gratefully. 3 months ago, she would have been terrified to see him. Now she felt something different, respect mixed with determination to make things right. Mr. Johnson has been a great teacher, Karen told the class. He showed me that we all have biases. The question is, what do we do when we recognize them? She looked around the room. That's what I want to talk with you about today. Marcus moved to the side of the room, letting Karen continue her story. 6 months after the slap that changed everything, Marcus Johnson stood at a podium in a large hotel conference room. In front of him sat over 200 airline workers, pilots, flight attendants, gate agents, and more. They were there for the company's annual staff meeting. Today, I want to talk about change, Marcus began. 6 months ago, our airline had a problem. Many black passengers told us they were not treated as well as white passengers. We knew we had to fix this. He clicked a button, and numbers appeared on the big screen behind him. Before we started our new training program, we had 15 complaints about unfair treatment in 1 month. Last month, we had only 2. The room filled with applause. Marcus held up his hand. That's good, but not good enough. Our goal is 0. Every passenger deserves the same respect and service, no matter what they look like. Marcus looked toward the back of the room and nodded. There's someone I'd like you all to hear from. Many of you know her story already. Please welcome Karen Williams. Karen walked to the front of the room. She looked different now, more confident, more at peace. She wore her flight attendant uniform with pride. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, she said as she took the microphone. 6 months ago, I slapped a passenger's hand because he didn't turn off his phone right away. That passenger turned out to be our CEO. A few people in the audience who hadn't heard the story gasped. Others nodded, already knowing what had happened. I could have lost my job that day, Karen continued. Instead, I was given a chance to learn and to help others learn. In the past 6 months, I've spoken to over 500 Sky Global employees about unconscious bias. Karen looked around the room. At first, I was ashamed to tell my story, but then something amazing happened. After each training session, people would come up to me and say, I do that too sometimes, without realizing it. By sharing my mistake, I helped others see their own hidden biases. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Johnson could have just fired me and moved on. That would have been easier. But he understood that one person wasn't the real problem. The problem was bigger, and it needed all of us to fix it. Marcus returned to the podium. Thank you, Karen. Your courage in sharing your story has made a real difference. He addressed the room again. Change isn't easy. It takes honest conversations and sometimes uncomfortable moments. But the results are worth it. He clicked to the next slide. It showed comments from recent passenger surveys. I felt welcomed and respected by every staff member. Best service I've ever had on any airline. For the first time in years of flying, I didn't feel like my race affected how I was treated. These are the results we want, Marcus said. And we're getting closer every day. After the meeting, Karen and Marcus stood talking in a quiet corner of the room. I never thank you properly, Karen said. Not just for keeping me on, but for helping me become a better person. Marcus smiled. Sometimes our worst moments can lead to our best growth. You turned a terrible mistake into something powerful. I still think about that day on the plane, Karen admitted. How differently I treated people. How angry I got at you. I wish I could go back and change it. We can't change the past, Marcus said. But you've helped change the future for thousands of passengers. A young flight attendant approached them nervously. Excuse me, Ms. Williams. Your training last week really opened my eyes. I've been watching myself more carefully since then. Thank you. Karen smiled. Thank you for listening. As the young woman walked away, Marcus turned to Karen. See, that's how change happens, one person at a time. Karen nodded. From a slap to a lesson, who would have thought? Sometimes the hardest moments teach us the most, Marcus said. The question is whether we're brave enough to learn from them. Looking around at her colleagues, Karen felt proud of how far she had come. One terrible mistake had led to so much positive change. For herself, for the airline, and for thousands of passengers who would now have a better experience. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it.